So we will go ahead and move on to municipal trends by department. This one I was talking to Claire earlier about. I was really excited about that because you all are the experts and you see this stuff on a regular basis. So I can't wait to kind of get a high level view of what you guys think are the things that we should be exploring as council and helping to set direction on.
Can I get them all set up right now?
Absolutely. Do we
Okay.
need to take 5 minutes?
No, I'm just going to give them instructions. It just may take them a little bit of time. They're going to figure it on the fly. So if you guys know what order you're in, so kind of queue up. Queue up. So what we're going to do, because there's a lot of trends and we can get really sidetracked. I mean, literally we could, if you're really interested in these 3 things on this first slide, we could spend an entire hour talking about them. So instead of doing that, the individual will spend 1 minute per trend, kind of summarize it. You guys take notes. If you're interested in going back to it at the end, ask the question and we'll go back to it. You'll see there is several that overlap. There's a lot of AI stuff in here. So you guys just take your notes and then we'll bring it back. But we'll just try to keep this pretty quick and 1 minute per.
Talk fast.
Not per slide, yeah, you can get up there. 1 minute per trend. So James, you're up.
You know I can't sit down, so. I've got a time limit, so I did what I normally don't do. I wrote notes. So I'm going to read my notes. So these are for community relations and tourism. The first one is integration of AI technology into communication. Chat software already is being used in some cities to create a 24-hour presence on their website, Arlington most recently, and theirs is extremely successful. Similar platforms like ChatGPT also have the potential to create text documents that can, at the very least, be a good first draft of letters or reports and so forth. There's actually a software out there called DALL-E, D-A-L-L-E, that can do the same thing with graphics. They're not great, but they're good starting points. As this technology becomes more reliable and prevalent, it's going to require an investment by us to implement those tools in a way to provide better service for our residents and meet public expectations. Did the battery die? No, I'm on. And meet public expectations. That doesn't count against my time. It will also change the technologies we use and how we use them. For an example, a website. Right now, there's always a fight to make sure your button shows up on the website. And the state legislature every year has a couple of bills to put buttons on our websites on the front page. Well, what if your front page just has to have a search window and you type in your question in plain English and it gives you a plain English language with step-by-step of what you need to do? We're not there yet, but we're closer than we were a year ago. So it could change a lot of what we do. It also changed the way team members handle many of our regular communication efforts, including advertising and marketing. The second one, the shift to non-traditional travel lodging. I'm going to guess at least one of you has used an Airbnb or a VRBO at some point in the past 18 months. And I say that, there we go, because in 2019, about 9% of all bookings in the country were short-term rentals. Last year, that was up to 14%. The pandemic pushed it up some, and that is growing every year. That's going to change not only where people stay when traveling, but how we reach them. It's going to change how we market to them. Are we going to have to form partnerships with short-term rental owners and organizations to make sure we get our travel information out to them and integrate those travelers? We might need to revisit the whole hotel tax received from short-term rentals question because they're not all paying it, and they're all supposed to. Previously, it's not really been economically feasible to collect it because it costs more to collect than you would actually receive. But as that percentage goes up, that's going to change. It also is going to change. I got that. Tax receipts is okay. So that's all for that. And the last one, emphasis on sustainability and events, travel, and art. Sustainability is a big thing in every industry. It is equally large in our industries. The public desire for more sustainable practices in all facets of daily life. For us, that includes we currently are developing and will be rolling out in 2 weeks some green event standards to improve the environmental profile of our events, which includes things like composting of food waste. It includes putting requirements on vendors to use compostable materials. It includes the new transformer we installed at the corner of Main and Mill to replace generators at some of our events, which will have savings on the financial side, but also reduce our emissions dramatically. So a lot on the special events, but also in terms of travel. Travelers are interested in green amenities and green activities. We have Leela, which is a great amenity, and we can take advantage of that, but how do we market to those travelers? How do we let them know what we have available and develop a series of activities that appeal to them? And how do we encourage our hotels and I guess short-term rentals to be more environmentally conscious and capitalize on that so that environmentally aware travelers choose Lewisville?
Excellent.
Awesome. I can do that.
You can beat that. Okay.
Awesome.
Over by 8
Go,
seconds.
Michelle. So, starting with how people shop and work. So, we all know that, since COVID, the online presence of our retailers are stronger than prior to the pandemic. So we don't see that changing anytime soon. And then how we work. So there's post-COVID, there's so many different options in how you work, whether that's traditional office space, whether that's co-working space, whether it's hybrid, meaning you're in the office part of the time and you're out of the office another part of the time, or working strictly from home. So even with non-traditional office space that's now coming into play, you can have different type of amenities now trying to engage your employers and get them to want to be at work. So that's amenities like having a gym or having some open space, having different dining options and those sorts of things. So going to DFW population growth. So I would say that DFW had the largest population growth of any other metro area in the U.S. between 20 and 21. I believe it was around 97,000 more residents in the DFW metroplex. So we're also leading in job growth as well, because with a lot more people comes more jobs, and we are also leading in the nation in sales from real estate investments as well. I'll hit on globalization as well. So businesses and industries are increasingly being more interconnected, again, across national borders. So that comes with both positive and negative effects. So being able to have more of a national presence or more of a global presence when it comes to people, knowledge, goods, and services sometimes can have an effect where there's great economic growth and there's great economic expansion, as well as it also promotes innovation and advances in technology as well. The negative in that is that sometimes that may affect the jobs in certain sectors. So some of those jobs may be now going overseas and we're not keeping it here in the US. And then it may also have an impact by exploiting employees in those developing countries while companies are trying to maximize their dollars. And that's all for me.
David Solomon.
Okay, well, for engineering, the first one, and I think you're going to see it's a common theme, is artificial intelligence. Only with engineering, it's with regard to traffic control. Artificial intelligence can be used to analyze traffic data and predict traffic patterns. That information can be used to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion. It can also be used to control traffic signals based on real-time traffic conditions, which would, of course, help reduce waiting times at signals and improve traffic flow. It can also be used with incident management. AI can be used to detect accidents and other incidents on the road. That information can be used to alert emergency services and to also reroute traffic. Smart parking. AI can be used to guide drivers to available parking spots. And then, of course, AI is also used to support autonomous vehicles. Vehicle to everything and vehicle to vehicle technology. This technology lets the car and the things around it talk to each other in real time. Interaction can be between vehicles and between vehicles and infrastructure such as traffic signals, school zone beacons, speed limit signs, etc. We can see a day where traffic speed speed limit sign or even a school zone beacon might be able to limit the speed at which vehicles travel through that area.
They're gonna regulate us automatically.
When you were a child, I'm sorry, when you were a young adult, they had these vehicles. Cars had governors on them.
My car never had a governor.
And nothing in your life ever had a governor, did it?
I refuse.
And then, of course, the last one is autonomous vehicles. The self-driving vehicles can obviously be used, they use different technologies to replace the human driver, particularly in navigating a vehicle from origin to destination and avoiding road hazards and responding to traffic conditions. This is one technology that, I've been reading a few articles on this because I find it kind of interesting, and the technology has proven to be much more complicated than what people really thought it was going to be. So
Look at Tesla.
yeah, and so of course it's not progressing quite as quickly as people originally thought it would. But they are progressing with it. Most of the cases right now are basically very controlled, moving people and goods, from one site to another in a very limited and controlled environment, actually using these types of vehicles out on the road for any distance is still not very common. So, but that technology is still coming along.
Thanks, Dave.
So they say that the more things change, the more they stay the same, and I'd have to say that's true for finance. There's some general themes here that have been and continue to be important trends for finance. One would be accountability and transparency. The other would be to gain efficiencies, improve your processes, and the other would be to increase customer service. So that's the focus for finance, and that's where we see our trends moving. The first item, greater financial transparency and providing information that is accessible and easy to understand. I think finance historically has been really good about just pushing out information, but now I think we need to get better at it, and not everybody is going to have a finance acumen that's going to be able to understand a 200-page annual financial report. So putting out something like the PAFR, the Popular Annual Financial Report, which is a condensed Reader's Digest version that provides the same kind of information so the reader gets value with that. Another thing is through that financial transparency is accountability and developing those KPIs and those metrics that could track our success or our progress on a certain project, and then communicating that out to the community through the metrics dashboards. So those are some of the things that we would do as it relates to that first point. The second point relates to the digital transformation of work processes and in order to gain efficiencies. Now, there's a number of processes in the finance department that we're already using an ERP system or technology to make us more efficient, but I think there's still some opportunities there. One example is with our new residents signing up for utility service, it's still very paper-driven. Is there a way that we can utilize digitization to make that a little bit easier? We've been able to use Laserfish forms and some other things for improving efficiency. So that would be in one area we would look at. Another way to gain these efficiencies and look for opportunities for improvement would be through our 5-year business plan that we have for the finance. One of the objectives is to review our SOPs on a regular basis. As we do that, we're going to identify, this is how we've done it in the past, there's a better way to do it. So it's going to force us to kind of review what we're doing and look for ways to improve it. And I think one of the first natural ways would be to use technology, however, to improve those processes. The last is always customer service. We want to provide a high level of customer service to our constituents. So we want to improve the customer experience and adapting to changing needs of our customers. I think there's been a shift in expectations in your customer service, where previously people would come up to the counter and have that interaction. Now I think it's more of a matter of convenience. So we're trying to balance the need for providing that customer service, over-the-counter, personal kind of touch with that convenience that I think some folks are looking for now. So that's always going to be a balance, but we're going to continue to try to meet those expectations. One thing that we've been talking about is 24/7 kiosk. Once we get done with the public safety complex, we're going to probably put a kiosk out there that not only for finance, but for courts and some other opportunities for folks to come in and do business with the city without having to come to City Hall for that. One thing I would like to make mention how we've used technology to improve customer services. We have the Everbridge, right, system that we can do call outs and notify people when they've got some upcoming bills and that kind of thing. Now we have a text function that now we can send out a text to those customers and they can actually click on a link and then process their bill payment through there. So it's just another way that we're making it a little bit easier for customers to do business with the city, and we're hoping to move forward with more of that. So.
Dave, when you mentioned convenience, you were talking about going to the window versus like a kiosk or a swipe or a digital transaction. Did you mean that the digital transactions are more convenient, or did you mean the do it for me at the counter is more convenient?
No. So we would still offer that personal touch customer service for those things, but for the customer that doesn't need to and they just need to pay a bill, I think it's more convenient to provide those electronic means of payment.
Gotcha. Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, for the fire department, I started off with alternative fuel vehicles. So following the consumer market where we have battery or hybrid powered cars and trucks, our manufacturers now are starting to offer fire equipment in the hybrid or electric models. There are benefits. We've moved a lot of our small equipment, our power equipment to battery. There's a lot of benefits to that, but there's a lot of challenges with a engine or a truck that's running on hybrid electric or power. There's benefits, but there's substantial cost with providing infrastructure in your stations to charge. So it's an emerging technology for the fire service, but I think that you will see it becoming more mainstream as we move along. And advancing technology, that could be in every group here. I think you're going to hear how that's impacting every department. But I'll hit three areas that I think technology is playing a big role in emergency services for us. And one of them is the UAVs and robotics. So we're not looking to replace firefighters. I don't think you'll ever replace the human, but I do believe that we're really in the emerging end of this. So we fly a drone now and we use that. It's been very beneficial, but there are so many more things that can be done with UAVs and robotics that we will see in the future that will make us more efficient, provide services better, and keep our firefighters safer. Another area is firefighter tracking and accountability in hazardous environments. So there's a lot of tools out there, but they're not completely reliable or accurate in hazardous environments, and most of them work on a single plane, so your X and Y axis. Providing that Z or three-dimensional vertical axis is important, and when we're working in multi-floor buildings, and so that's an area that's coming along and will play an important role in providing safety for our firefighters. And the final role is, I think we'll see this play in pre-hospital emergency care. So EMS is becoming much more integrated into the total healthcare system and not just delivering a patient to the hospital. I think technology, as it advances, you'll see more types of medical services being able to be offered pre-hospital, many times probably preventing a transport to the hospital. So you're providing medical care, you're reducing the strain on the hospital system at a better cost. And then finally, our health and wellness initiatives. So this is a huge area we've been focused on, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. Firefighters face a sharply increased risk of cancer compared to the general public. This is due to the exposures from exhaust, from smoke, and even the protective clothing we wear. And so they're always making pushes to improve that. The physical nature and the stresses of the job also is a strain on the cardiovascular system, and heart attacks continue to be a leading cause of death. On top of the physical risk that firefighters face, the mental and emotional trauma that comes along with that can be just as debilitating and deadly for many firefighters. So improving how we address these issues is critical, and it will play an important role in ensuring the stability and the longevity of our workforce.
All right. So I just had 30 minutes with you all, so I will go quickly. My items 1 and 3 are really tied to the prior presentation, and I think it's pretty clear. Employers right now who aren't putting a focus on meeting the needs of their workforce and enhancing the employee experience will be at a disadvantage. So I think that's big. But the one I really wanted to focus on is the middle one, mental health. This is from the employer perspective, but I would echo what Chief just finished on in his area. One piece of mental health for us is, how do we care for our first responders who, encounter trauma in their work? But more broadly, I would use like the airline industry, current people getting kicked off of flights as a proxy for the state of mental health in the world. Folks are anxious, folks are depressed, folks are mad, all kinds of things going on out in the world, and you see this on the counseling side of things. There's a shortage of counseling appointments available to people in the world. But one thing that we are doing today through our Wellness Works clinic, we have a part-time counselor who's seeing city employees. She saw 32 in January. She has a wait list every month, and so we know this is an emerging area of challenge for everyone everywhere, but it's something we definitely want to keep an eye on as an employer. And I will cede the rest of my time to the technology king, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
I think Chris paid you off.
Oh, no. So,
definitely
good
consideration
afternoon,
in that.
Mayor, Council, and I have a hard time keeping anything to 3 minutes, so here we go.
We need to advance
Actually,
it. Can you
next slide.
advance it?
All right, here we go. So you're hearing a lot about AI, right, and machine learning, and that's a buzzword, hot topic, all that good stuff, but yeah, no, it's really here. And so artificial intelligence, when you think about it, there's really two pieces that are common right now, right? So you have what's known really as reactive, right? And think of reactive more like your kiosk or something that you're programming. I say kiosk, something that you're programming. It could be a chatbot, but anyway, it knows everything about what you're actually going to deliver. So there's not a whole lot of magic to it, if you will. But again, that's one of the entry levels. And then you also have limited memory in AI. And limited memory, think of that more as scenarios like what David was just talking about when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, to where you still have some of that data that's programmed, right, and algorithms that go with it, but there are other variables that it can take into play, like what we were talking about, the conditions of the traffic, right? So those are the two areas that you currently are seeing the most development in, but you also are seeing some of these other things like ChatGPT. Everybody knows what that is, right? And so that is really more of it's a natural language processing model, and that really allows you to have human interaction and get that same type of feedback just through command lines with respect to the way you would talk to anything else. And we also heard about how that's also coming back not only with text, but with graphics now. Super cool stuff. Some people are scared it's going to take people's jobs away. I don't see that. I see this more as I do think it's a disruptor, meaning that people should be able to leverage this just like I used an analogy back in the 90s when you had spreadsheets and Excel, and that really helped accountants do their jobs and things of that nature. This is a game changer from that standpoint, right? You heard James talk about utilizing it for rewriting or proof reading articles or some scenarios where you might have a brainstorming sessions. A lot of ways you can use it. Super cool. And I can talk all day about it, but I got to go to the next subject. Edge computing and cloud computing. So what you're seeing there with edge computing, and again, we'll take the traffic system, for example. You have a lot of things happening. When you say edge, that means that I don't have to come back to a server to do processing, for instance, right? So now at my traffic signals and my controllers, I can do a lot of that work as far as the compute right there at the edge, right? So we're saving time. It also helps with the transport if I'm going to like other agencies feeding that data. Again, when we're talking about autonomous cars and being able to get that data, it's got to be quick, real time, right? So that's where we're at with edge computing. Cloud computing. Cloud computing, everybody knows what that is for the most part, right? It's when you're hosting applications, you're not running them on premise. So with that, it changes the model. No more perpetual licensing. Everything really is hosted. Everything's a subscription-based. Ransomware, cybersecurity, 90% of all security incidents are really happening. It's social engineering. So it's still, you know, the phishing, all the training that we do. I'm out of time, but I got so much more to say. So I hope you guys have questions.
Okay, thank you. The sharing economy trend that I'm bringing up, we're seeing in libraries, but also in other departments and outside government agencies as well. This is where you're seeing a change in the world where the traditional model of ownership is changing and people are more excited about access over ownership. So libraries have been leaders in the sharing economy for a long time, and they're going to have new opportunities for sharing resources and spaces. So we're just supposed to see what we can do and what we can share to stay relevant in this sharing economy and meet the needs of people. So I think cities and governments are going to see more opportunities to use the sharing economy to benefit our citizens. And libraries will have an opportunity to align ourselves with organizations that are involved in the sharing economy. So some examples might be like bike sharing or repair cafes or workspaces. Since appreciation and adoption of the sharing economy changes depending on your generation, we may see, because millennials and Generation Z are more willing to participate, a growth in the adoption of libraries because of this trend. Okay, shifting patron expectations. So this is nothing new. We've seen shifts in patron expectations since the Lewisville Library started 55 years ago. We've come a long way, and we've made a lot of changes. So we're seeing this on many fronts. One example might be the shift from print to digital. So the library will just have to stay with that trend and make changes and shift our funding to where the trends are going. Another one might be a shift to where patrons are. So we're seeing more demand for outreach and for meeting patrons where they are. And that could be something as simple as mobile services, or it could be like book lockers or programming out in the field. The library serves as a bridge through the digital divide, and of course, those basic services and reaching technology in the library and using them and learning them are going to stay important. But we are also seeing a shift in people bringing their own technology to the library, obviously. Let's see. The last one I wanted to mention was intellectual freedom. So I just want to simply mention that there is a lot going on with materials challenges and legislation. But it's primarily focused on school libraries at this point. But what kind of legislation on parental rights is coming, and what impact might it have on the library world and the public library world in the future?
Okay, municipal court.
All right, so with municipal court, our first trend is with easier access to the court. We've went through this transformation basically since COVID statewide. Courts were really encouraged to meet people where they were at, and that meant having video court. That meant creating ways in which they could interact with the court without physically having to come in person. So we've seen numerous things created, such as online requests for dispositions. We've seen digital signatures on paperwork, being able to capture that paperwork remotely, electronic payments, even things such as text message reminders, or even communicating with defendants back and forth with text messaging or chat through our website. Now, since then, just in the last week, we've actually had an emergency order expire that the Supreme Court actually authorized us to do the online court options, and I believe Judge was going to say something.
Yeah, so we were concerned, there's been, over the last week, there's been a lot of scrambling across the state, trying to figure out how we're going to continue to do virtual hearings. And I've been working with a couple of judges over the last week, trying to figure out how we're going to do this.
And just last night, we were able to pass a bill, file a bill, hasn't been passed yet, file a bill that will allow us to continue virtual hearings, at least for pretrial hearings. And so that will allow us to continue to have access for most everything we're doing right now. So that was a big win for us, and we're excited we're able to continue to do that.
So it's been a real big push statewide. So it's not just us. I believe the city of Irving was instrumental in that as well. And so our second trend is we're seeing a statewide trend where the citation issuances are going down, which obviously impacts our abilities at the court. It lowers our caseload. This can also lead to other issues such as the campaign that Texas is in right now, where there hasn't been a deathless day on the road since November 7th of 2000 on a Texas highway. So, as we've seen through HR, we're obviously having trouble filling positions as well. So that would obviously impact that ability to issue citations out there on the street. Our third trend that we're seeing statewide is also a big push for certifications and really educating our court clerks. For years, we've had a lot of education for our judges, but they had to deal with us clerks who weren't always as educated. And so we've seen a big push for that over the years. Right now, there's 3 levels of certification for court clerks. There's 592 level 1 certified clerks, 617 level 2 certified clerks, and 130 level 3 certified clerks in Texas. And just within our court, we have 3 level 1 certified, soon to be a 4th level 2 certified, and then 1 level 3 certified. So we've seen this push. Yes. We've seen this push because in 2016, there was actually only 52 level 3 certified clerks. So we've seen that more than double since 2016.
So for neighborhood and inspection services, talking about animal services and intakes, last year at the shelter, we received 1,352 animals coming into the shelter, and 40% of owners will find their dog and 5% of owners will reclaim their cat. So really the future is preventing animals from even coming into the shelter in the first place. So we're seeing nonprofits partner with municipal animal shelters to offer free microchipping, and so really continuing to push that. We're offering more and more free microchipping clinics. One person could even use their Apple AirTag, although I don't know that Apple recommends it, but you could attach an AirTag to your pet, and as long as you're in Wi-Fi distance and your pet is within distance from your phone, you can find them, or you could report that AirTag missing, and somebody with an iPhone could see that the AirTag's missing and call that number. And that's only $29 in addition to a microchip. And then also there's facial recognition for your pet. There's Petco has purchased an app where you can upload a picture of your lost pet, and it's checking a nationwide database of missing pets. But there is that out there, and it's getting better. Running out of time, but communication, community engagement, just making sure that, like, Animal Services has a pet that keeps running out and they need their fence repaired, to let them know, we have a pet program, or health services utilizing CITF, community inclusion and task force funding to provide food safety training, or we have a certain grant that's open in a certain specific area with a city to make the code officer aware of that. So utilizing data and information for that person that's doing code enforcement of the programs that we have for grants. Innovative building materials. There's a company out of California that produces panelized housing. It's called Cover, and they're currently producing or building accessory dwelling units in California, and hasn't really come through to Texas yet, but and that would actually be inspected by the Industrialized Housing and Building Agency here in Texas, but It'll be interesting to see what Elon Musk does with Tesla Town in Austin as he's partnering with Lennar Homes, and this company also works with Lennar Homes. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the future of that moves forward.
All right, so talking a little bit about the trends that we're seeing in parks and recreation, starting with the thoughts of it's all natural and looking at things of how parks and recreation can be a part of the preventive health and wellness initiatives where people can access health care, but also see our facilities as a place to get well, not only whether mentally or physically, where we might be seeing also like power down times during camps, making sure kids aren't always on their phones, but also things along the lines that James talked about with special events, at looking at how we can be more sustainable, maybe with our food trucks, looking at single-use utensils, like you can eat them type things. They're made out of stuff that you can eat, not just compost. But also with the human composting is now a trend that we're looking at in terms of people asking to be planted or with a tree upon their demise, right?
Yeah.
And us making sure that our...
You get to pick out what type of tree.
Yes,
also.
and how we accommodate that within our ordinances and stuff. So, and then the other thing on that is looking at how we look at park development that is completely sustainable, that you use materials found on the property to help build or part of the system. So as we look at the Nature Center, we start looking at things like that. Moving on to the balancing of use of automation and technology. Everybody wants to get ahead and say that tech is where we need to go, and yes, it is, but we have to remember that there's a certain segment of our community that wants that continued human action. They don't want a data up at the fitness floor when they go to work out and thrive. But we can use automation to extend our services, like having kiosks to rent kayaks to get out on Lewisville Lake and just go and put it back up when you're done with it. Same with firewood at the campgrounds. Perhaps looking at mowers that are automated, not to do things like mowing in the median, but to eliminate risk when we're mowing on steep embankments, right? So from a safety aspect. But also using technology to extend our services to people who are historically shut out of experiencing the wealth of parks and recreation, like looking at ATV wheelchairs so that people who are on wheelchairs can experience the full experience of Leela. Or perhaps looking at digital twin mapping, which provides a 3D experience where it's not just putting on a GoPro, but using GIS to create that in-depth experience so that someone who might have to experience our facilities by a GoPro or online would get that third dimension as they're watching TV on it. So that's kind of cool. And then Dave mentioned a little bit of this, of the idea of vehicle to building. So moving to the EVs, but making sure our EVs can output to make sure that maybe during a special event we can keep, maybe a porta potty air conditioned a little bit easier. So looking at that. And then really the other thing that we're really concerned about and watching is the idea of the work from home and alternative schedule and how that's impacting the use of parks and recreation. And it's hitting us from two standpoints. There used to be traditional times that people used our facilities on the weekends, before school and after school. But now with the alternative work schedules, we're not seeing a downtime, which is great with the exception of we're having a hard time hiring our frontline team members, right? And there's not a downtime for our team. So when does our team recreate? And we still provide that continuum of services. So those are the things that we're looking at.
For my three trends in planning, you're going to see a lot of overlap with the other departments. First one we have on here is climate change adaptation. A lot of communities are really focusing on resilience when it comes to extremes to weather, to be able to withstand those impacts and to bounce back from them when they do occur. Some other subtopics include rewilding, and it kind of touches on the natural that Stacy talked about, restoring areas of your community back to more natural habitat. That has a lot of benefits, particularly with biodiversity. Green infrastructure is also kind of a subset influenced by climate change. I think for engineering, when you convert concrete channels to more natural systems where you have more plants that can filter out the toxins in the stormwater, those are all things, particularly like we mentioned ISWIM earlier, those are all encouraged by those type of policies to move more towards green infrastructure. Net zero homes and transportation. That reminds me that we do have a small home builder in Lewisville that uses 3D printing to print the metal studs for the homes, and they're fabricated in the shop and put on a truck. A lot of benefits, termite resistant, it's easier to put together, there's less waste, you save time, so there's a lot of benefits for that. He has built one home off of Garden Ridge in Lewisville, and I think he's got a contract with a larger builder for more lots, so in some other communities. So I think that's something we're going to see a lot more of as housing costs go up. And again, transportation, you see the same idea with emphasis on bicycle and rail transportation. So that's something that we're doing here in this area. Alternative home construction methods, again, that also impacts affordability. Chris touched on that. And then water. Water is such a big issue, especially water consumption. Water supply is so very expensive. One trend is, more natural yards, a move away from turf grass, particularly out west. I mean, they're in crisis mode out there with dwindling water supplies, but they're still experiencing growth. So that all kind of ties back to climate change. Second one, demographic changes. So I got quite a bit here. It's a pretty broad topic, but work from home has really shifted everything due to COVID. But it's had a major impact on cities and commuting and how cities operate. Another trend is retiring baby boomers and Gen Xers. I'm starting to hear now more Gen Xers. My demographic are starting to think about retirement. So that starts opening up issues for the care and housing and transportation for those folks. And then again, housing. We touched on that before. Especially the cost of housing. So many people are being priced out of housing and losing that opportunity for home ownership. You're seeing a big rise in investor ownership of single-family homes. We've talked about that earlier today. Missing middle housing, smaller housing, zoning reform, getting away from from just strictly single-family zoning, allowing more variety in housing. And then finally, I'll touch real quickly on the 10-minute city. That could also apply to a 10-minute neighborhood like Old Town. And the definition for 15-minute city is an urban planning concept in which most daily necessities and services such as work, shopping, education, healthcare, and leisure can be easily reached by a 15-minute walk or a bike ride from any point in the city. It reduces car dependency, promotes healthy and sustainable living, and improves the overall quality of life for city dwellers. It does require a multidisciplinary approach involving transportation planning, urban design policymaking, in order to create well-designed public spaces, pedestrian-friendly streets, and mixed-use developments. And I know I'm way over.
Chris, you're no longer in the doghouse.
I'm here to make up time.
I was going to say Deaver's going to say, go ahead, just real quick. 3 sentences.
All right, so the first one's the biggest one for police departments, and we really don't know where this one's going, and it's focused on police accountability and the reimagining of policing. I think what we've seen over the years is the responsibilities have grown on policing, and I say responsibilities in quotations because it really wasn't our responsibility, but society failed to handle the situation, like homelessness, mental illness and things like that, and that resorts to when there's no one else to call, they're going to call 911. So there is a pushback to put those services back on the private sector, either with the government agencies or with public service agencies. We've even had issues with disciplinary issues at schools and having to resolve those. Luckily, there's been some attempt to take that away from us. Where we see it going is really uncertain. I think there's some bills in the legislature right now to limit the arrest authorities of police officers, maybe even removing most misdemeanor arrests from our purview, where we don't have a choice with citation. I'm not sure that's the answer, but that's some legislation that's proposed. Another thing we're seeing that some departments are doing is a civilian response to calls that typically would have been police, and they may be report calls, parking issues, the mental health aspect, homelessness. Some are even doing traffic enforcement. And traffic enforcement's like the second most dangerous thing we do, so I'm not sure that's a good solution either. But I think what does work are the alternative responses where we partner with other people, and that's like we did with co-care. I think we've seen great success with that as other agencies have. And then finally on this one, the transparency. There's got to be a national database where we can track police misconduct and stop the officers from moving from department to department. That should be discovered in background searches, but everyone's not doing the background searches like they could. The next one I have is increasing use of technology, and that goes back to predictive policing and intelligence-led policing. Artificial intelligence to be more proactive and less reactive to crime. Advanced analytics and intervention models. We've all seen, if you've seen the news, the Dallas hotspot model that has proven to be very effective in Dallas. Very similar to what I proposed several years ago with the DDAX program. And once we get our staffing up, we're going to try to move to that where we can get that started. The last thing on this one is drones. I think we're going to see that more prevalent in policing and public safety in general. I know Mark mentioned it. One of our current partners that we work with in the industry, they are real close to getting FAA approval for remote pilot drones. So I think we'll eventually see drones being launched from different places. And then lastly, health and wellness for public safety. A lot of illnesses associated with the job. The one that mainly comes to mind is heart disease. And I think we may see the legislature and entities push that heart disease becomes a workman's comp type issue. And another part of it's mental health. We've got to do better with mental health and get people the help they need. Did I go over? Am I in the doghouse?
You have now taken the lead.
You're fine.
No pressure.
All right, we'll try to be quick. When I first put this together, it said retire, 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 and it was pointed out that that was not a valid trend for our organization. So I got with Kelly, and Kelly's going to talk through some future beyond May 31st issues affecting us.
So increasing regulatory requirements at state and federal levels. What causes these regulatory requirements or these changes at those levels? Just look at the events that have happened over the last decade. Flint, Michigan, public health issues there. You have Winter Storm Uri just not too long ago. And then you have, in Lewisville's example, of just annexing a new territory. So all of these changes require us to change. And I want to talk about just two things that are coming down the line, specifically on the water side. If you haven't heard of PFAS, it's per or polyfluoroalkyl substances. I can already see people's eyes kind of glazing over. But the EPA currently is evaluating for presence across the United States. And what they're ultimately going to do is they're going to come up with a rule on how to treat. So we are kind of patiently waiting this to be analyzed and how we're going to ultimately, bless you, how we ultimately react to that coming down the line. The other one coming down the line, it's going to come down a lot sooner. It's our revised lead and copper rule. Key word on that is revised. We've always had a lead and copper rule for a number of decades right now. But coming off on the hills of Flint, Michigan, the rule is becoming a lot more stringent, and it's going to be quite burdensome on utilities in terms of reacting to identifying what types of materials are buried underground for service lines, and ultimately removing those suspect lines in the system. That rule is actually going to go into effect October of 2024, so that's right around the corner. Technological process and process advancement, obviously AI. Dave Erb's presentation talked about the predictive capabilities of AI and better informing capital improvement projects and allocation of funds. I want to jump over real quickly to just a process advancement and accreditation. So the American Public Works Association has an accreditation program, and a lot of entities, public service entities, public works entities have sought or are seeking accreditation, and that is actually on our 5-year business plan that y'all have in y'all's packets here. But we actually will be seeking accreditation here in the future. So number 3, and hopefully I'm making good time here, but sustainability, as James said, it's almost an expectation. And sustainability, no matter what kind of business decision we're making, it's going to be woven in the fabric of those decisions. We've already have a number of policies in place, vehicle idling policies, alternative fuels, alternative fuel vehicles in the fleet, other engineered solutions for buildings, motion activated lighting, reflective roofing systems. The possibilities are endless, and they continue to grow, and it's just going to be a part of life going forward. So that's all I have.
All right. So council, with kind of that high level overview of what things might be or what that crystal ball might look like, I'd like to kind of steer the direction in one of 2 ways for responses or conversation. The first would be that if you had some comments on things that maybe you would have an interest in or would like to see staff kind of follow up on at a later date. The other is there something maybe you wanted to dig into a little bit more with staff right now? That's going to consume a bit more time, so I'm going to actually kind of tighten those requests up. But either one of those options, please avail yourself of.
So I would love to follow up with Chris off meeting about all the great technology stuff that we can do. So yeah, make that happen. I'll get with Claire and Chris to make that happen.
Okay.
I've had a collision with the wall, so I don't think I want to.
You're good?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Troyer?
I'm good at this point.
Okay.
I appreciated everything that was said, so it's.
Anyone else?
I've got one quick thing for, I guess, police and fire. I'd like to see on the heart disease and the mental health aspect, is there any push to make that mandatory at some point? I'd like to see what the trend is on that in the future, kind of thing.
Councilmember Green?
No, I'm good.
I have a list. So a few things that kind of piqued my interest here that I would like to have a bit more discussion on. When we're talking about autonomous vehicles, my brain immediately went to UAVs, drones, those types of tools. And while that's an engineering issue, that's a code issue, and I think it's also a legal issue. And I don't know how strong our ordinances are on that. So I'd be really interested in seeing us making sure that we've got protections for homeowners, property owners, as far as just having roaming cameras coming across our neighborhoods and what's available, what's not. And I'll probably talk about this one a bit more tomorrow. But to Mr. Kunke and the team, we have a huge opportunity with artificial intelligence to become a trusted source on the internet. I don't know about you all, but all of the big websites that I use as great tools have become garbage. You do a Google search and you can't get information until you scroll down past 20 ads.
Exactly.
You go to Amazon, you can't find what you want to buy. Twitter's just always been a smoking dumpster fire. But anyhow, people are looking for that place of truth where they can get information. And if we can get to a point where somebody says, hey, I want to build a shed in my backyard, they literally say it, and our page doesn't just do a search and come up with a few links, but it literally spits back, hey, here's the link for the graphic, and if it's under 120 square feet, you're fine. If it's over 120 square feet, here's who you need to talk to. Would you like us to plug you into them and get you an email? Being able to create a near frictionless conversation with residents through technology, I think, is where AI is going to make cities amazing. Finance. Dave, part of the reason I asked that question is part of the convenience I'm seeing in the current generation, we're experiencing it with DCTA, is that convenience doesn't necessarily mean just a swipe now. It means do it for me. And I worry because we are so service-oriented in the public sector that we might find ourselves bending into that do it for me as opposed to teaching them how to fish. So I would challenge every department, you know, what are you seeing there? Both internal and external, internal customers and external customers. On the hiring side of things, what are we doing to make things frictionless? My kids this past summer one of them literally, she went to 10 different places to get a job, and every one of them pushed her back online.
Right.
And she didn't hear anything. She couldn't get a summer job because there were so many hoops.
And ads in front of her.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing where people have to go through 4 and 5 interviews just to get hired. And I get that, but at some point you're not hiring a piece of paper. You're hiring a person, and you got to make a commitment. You don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So I've challenged us internally, what are our processes and how many hoops are we making people, you know, how much friction are we creating? Library, I would love to see, and I'm going to phrase this wrong, but I've seen, and so I think we all have at some point or another, that whole concept of how to check out an expert. Where you can like schedule time with whether that's a small business expert or a finance expert or something like that. If we could find a way to build a catalog of those folks, I think that'd be kind of fun. I would love to see us get the judges' legislation on our agenda and be able to put that, since it's not part of our legislative agenda currently. I'd love for council to take a look at that at a future date. And I think, guys, just the way we're going with technology and where the world is, you know, overall, all the departments, I think we do a great job, but I'm going to encourage everybody, how do we double down on getting residents engaged and having those frictionless types of encounters? You know, if I want to check out the neighborhood block party in a box, how frictionless is that? How easy can that be? Can we make it quicker? Can we make it simpler? I hearken back to the HR stuff, right? That we've got a great set of tools, but if nobody knows how to do it or it's confusing, you know, we know how to do it. So, and I'm challenging myself on this as part of DCTA and transit. It can be really difficult. So that's my list. Thank you for indulging me. With that, we're going to take, I think, a 15-minute break unless there's something anybody would like to add at this point. Amazing job by staff. Thank you so much. I am so pleased with the content we've had today. We're going to come back and have our hosts here talk to us a little bit more about revitalization down here and hopefully find out a little bit more about the brewery expansion and whatnot. So let's take a 15-minute break, and we will be back here at 4:35.